I'm just going to fill in a little bit of the blank here. I'm, like several other people here, a native Arizona. My family's actually been in Arizona since the 1870s, but they had the good sense to move north, and they actually settled in Tempe. I'm sorry, I said that they actually settled in Tempe in the 1870s, and they got here in the 1790s. So we've got a long track record in Arizona. I'm very proud of the fact that we are native Arizonans, and part of that is because we take ownership. Our families take ownership of what we've had, what we've been able to produce. I'm also a commander of Navy Reserves. I'm a former Marine Corps enlisted guy. I got commissioned in the Navy Reserves. I'm a commander. And quite recently, I've been to places like Iraq and Afghanistan. I'll also tell you that because I'm a reserve officer. My full-time job isn't the Navy. But I think what it does do when you leave this country and go to war-torn countries, it gives you a bigger appreciation of what you do here. I was fortunate when I got off active duty the first time in the Navy. I got into development work. I worked in the Department of Commerce, very large construction coming after that, and I started my own company. But when you develop stuff, you take ownership of what's there. And so we started this campaign thinking, well, gosh, what's the most important thing? Why are you in this race? We didn't want to sit in the sidelines. And it's about jobs and economy. That's the most critical thing we could be talking about. There are a lot of issues out there, women's issues, the class warfare, whatever else it is, but you know what? We're focused on jobs and the economy. That's what we know best. That's what we feel comfortable with. About 2 months ago, we released a 5-point jobs creation plan. I'll just go through 3 of the top issues. The first one is cutting the corporate tax rate. Whether we do it with R&D tax credits, whether we do it with capital investment, whether we do it by just cutting 35% down to a manageable number. Maybe it's 25%, maybe it's 30% before we get that 25%. The point is we're just not competitive. We need to look at that. The second part is we're over-regulated. We know they're not going to get below the Clean Air or Clean Water Act in this country, and that's okay. We shouldn't. But to have a federal, a state, a county, and sometimes city regulatory environments or agencies looking at it before you pull a permit, that's crazy. It's wasting time. The third thing that's near and dear, really dovetailed into small business and Hispanic-owned businesses, is that we believe that the taxes we pay for capital gains, interest, and dividends, they should be eliminated for the middle class. Whether it's $200,000, $250,000, I'm not going to quibble over $50,000. It's the middle class that own the small businesses. If we eliminate those taxes, that burden, guess what? We reinvest, we save, we hire people. That's an economic stimulus in and of itself the government doesn't produce. Again, looking at the small business numbers, between 1993 and 2009, almost 10 million net new jobs were created by small business. It's a huge number. 2/3 of all the jobs that were created were from the small business sector. So that's something we need to look at. With respect to the Hispanic population, guess what? There's a favorite saying line from a famous Navy guy who became the president, a rising tide lifts all boats. I think if we create jobs in this state, in this nation, everybody benefits. The trade with Mexico is very important. Right now, in a very down economy here, $6 billion, okay? Texas did about 10 times that amount. But the point is, that's a big number. $6 billion with Mexico and trade is a big number. The economies get better, we should definitely not turn our back on our trading partner and our neighbor. So I look forward to the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
For having me here and for allowing me to take part in this discussion. I think it's very important. My name is, as you said, Leah Campo-Schandelbauer, and I'm a wife and mother of 4 children, and my husband is currently serving a tour in Afghanistan. I recently left a career serving as an operations officer in the clandestine service of the CIA, working and living abroad, running operations and collecting intelligence for our country's security. And I had that job because I simply love this country and I wanted to do my part. But over the years, I began to hear, coming out of Washington, the type of class warfare rhetoric that I had grown accustomed to hearing out of the mouths of tin-horn dictators around the world. The type of politics of resentment that was something I had been all too familiar with in countries like Argentina or Venezuela. But it was unnerving to hear it, in my view, coming out of Washington. And I came to understand that what was happening was that our president was using this rhetoric to take our country further down the road toward a path, toward a European-style social democracy, an economic system that is based on false promises, cronyism, and the wrong-headed belief that the federal government is the driving force behind economic growth. Add to that the fact that our political class in Washington seems incapable of coming up with fresh ideas to get us out of the political rut we're in. And I was one very concerned citizen, and that's why I decided to jump in this race. I come from a working class family. My father was born into a very impoverished family of Mexican American copper miners from Superior. And he and my mother worked very hard when I was a kid to give my siblings and me the opportunities that they never had, often working several jobs between them to do this. But what they always told us was that the American dream was alive and well, and that through hard work and personal responsibility, the sky was the limit. Well, I believe that that's still true today, but I'm concerned that we're running the risk of losing that for our children if we don't once again embrace the true application of free enterprise, which is the cornerstone of this country's prosperity. I don't see how we can fix the structural problems in this country, the debt and deficit spending, the fact that our entitlement programs are nearing insolvency, and our depressed economic growth and job creation, if we don't go back to embracing free enterprise. I feel strongly that free enterprise is a moral economic system because it uplifts human dignity. It gives us all the freedom to define and earn our own success. And yet our politicians on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat alike, have put up barriers to that freedom in the form of overtaxation, overregulation, and crony capitalism. And I want to go to Washington to put a stop to that, because I believe that the only way we're going to recover the entrepreneurial spirit of this country, the only way we're going to get people to once again build their dreams and create jobs is if we embrace free enterprise. And that's only going to happen if we get the federal government out of the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah, very much.
I'm Wendy Rogers. I live in Tempe. I chose to live in this district 15 years ago when I retired as a lieutenant colonel from the United States Air Force as one of the first women pilots in the Air Force. My husband Hal and I started our business out of the living room in our home in Mesa in the district. We started our home inspection business while we were homeschooling our children. And now I sit before you as an employer, a job creator. I have 14 employees for whom I am responsible. I own an office building that I manage with 8 tenants. I'm a member of 2 chambers of commerce, and I work my business hard. And this is one reason I'm running for Congress. Chick-fil-A. Why are 2 mayors thinking they have control over where a business can do business because of free speech? Where has our country come to that we can't express ourselves as business owners for fear of being kicked out of a city? What is wrong with that picture? I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I took that oath very seriously. I spent nearly half of my 20-year career overseas in countries, many of which do not have a constitution like ours. And I take it very personally as a business owner, a mother of 2, a grandmother of 1, a wife, a retired officer, all those things, because I made my father a promise. February 6th, when he was passing away in Williamsburg, Virginia. I'm a 5th generation military officer. Our son is a 6th generation military officer. And I promised my dad that I would dedicate my campaign to his legacy and for what he fought for in World War II and Korea, and what I fought for to win the Cold War, and when I was deployed to run the Bosnian airlift. That I would get our country back, and as a business owner, I know more intimately than anyone else. Government does not create jobs. Government needs to get out of the way.
Thank you, Wendy, very much.
Enough for all of us. When I was in school, they used to always say, if you don't have enough for the whole class. But thank you, Wendy. Appreciate it. You know,
First of all, thank you guys for hosting this event tonight. I attended a community college, and I can tell you right from the start that I can tell you every instructor that I had. I was the first person in my family to attend college, and when I transferred from Long Beach Community College to Cal State Long Beach, I can tell you this, that the community college prepared me for Georgetown University's law school better than any other institution, so thank you for what you all do. You know, my grandmother, she raised me, it was in an area that was replete with drugs, gangs, and violence. The famed rapper Snoop Dogg lived right around the corner. And she instilled in me a very important principle, and that principle was the American dream. And she didn't realize that that was the American dream, but to her, the American dream was that she wanted something better for me than what she had. And she told me, if you worked hard enough, you can be whatever you want to be. And when I served, well, first of all, when I went to Georgetown University's law school and I didn't have enough resources to go, my grandmother at 75 years of age started cleaning houses just to help get me there. And when I served in the White House as a special assistant to President George H.W. Bush, to her, that was the American dream. When I was unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate as an assistant secretary, to her, that was the American dream. And when I served as the mayor of the great town of Paradise Valley, again, to her, that was the American dream. It was the American dream because it was something more than what she had. She picked cotton. She told me stories about her hands bleeding. And to her, to see her grandchild, accomplish something more than what she did, that was the American dream. Today, I have an 18-year-old son. He just graduated from high school. He does not have that same American dream. Today, we have a president who has increased our deficit by $5 trillion. And guess what? Who's going to have to pay for it? Future generations. Today, we have the highest corporate income tax in the world. And what happens there? Jobs are fleeing America, and they're going overseas, they're going elsewhere. And the reason is this. The reason is very simple. Investors, they do not invest in uncertainty. And in our country, we do two things. We regulate and we take. We take in the form of taxes and we regulate. Regulations, we have bureaucrats who are in Washington, D.C. today who are passing regulations with the effect of law. And when I get to Congress, I will guarantee you one thing, that we will examine any regulation that has been passed that has the effect of law. And I can tell you one more thing, that the American dream will be alive and well. I will fight for the people of this district, and I will make sure that we truly come back and give future generations the opportunity to be what they can be without being stifled by the highest corporate income tax in the world and the most regulatory, stringent system that we have in the world. I believe in this country, I believe in the future, and I will work to make sure that future generations enjoy what we enjoy.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, James. I'm Travis Grantham. Grew up in Arizona, third generation. I'm a husband, proud father, have two daughters, 7 and 4. I own an airplane business at the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, where I've served as Chief Operations Officer for 8 years, and I'm a National Guard pilot. I hold the rank of captain. I get the privilege of pinning on Major in February, and I'm deployable today. I'll be one of the few House members who can vote to send our troops to war, and then I will go to war. And I think that's important. And I want to thank Rio Salado, everyone in attendance. I too am a product of the community college system. I went to Scottsdale Community. I was a proud artichoke. And then, did you know that?
No.
And I hold a degree from the Community College of the Air Force, which not many people talk about. But another great program that educates a lot of folks who enter the military to get that education. And went on to Arizona State. And I'm going to go on a limb here and try to answer the question, because nobody's done it. And we see a lot of that in these forums. Everybody's got a great story to tell, and everybody's got a lot of things to say about Republicans and Democrats and evil corporations and all this. We're in this together. It doesn't matter if you're Hispanic, it doesn't matter if you're black or white. We are $16 trillion in debt in this country. And it poses a bigger threat to this nation than anything in the world today. Any enemy, anyone. And if we don't join together and fix this problem, we're not going to have this platform that we're sitting here at tonight to discuss these very issues. We were asked to address, if elected to Congress, how will you specifically work to address and promote the nation's economic recovery and future growth? I will work tirelessly to get the federal government out of the way. You know, owning a business, I deal with so many regulations and so many taxes and so many burdensome rules. And bureaucrats, quite frankly, in Washington, who are appointed by Republican presidents and are appointed by Democrat presidents, who rule at the tip of their finger with a stroke of a key or on the end of the phone. They interpret our federal register, they interpret our rules, and they hand them down to us, the job creators, and it has to stop. The federal government is in every single aspect of our everyday lives. They're in our homes, they're in our schools, they're in our churches, they're in our businesses. We need to remove that power out of the people's places, as I talk about. How will you influence and advance and shape Arizona's economic growth, including CD9? You know, something nobody has talked about up here other than David, and I commend him for it, is the fact that Arizona State is the heart of this district. Education is key in preserving our economic future in this country. Intel is located in this district. I met with Intel a week ago. They are having to go to Russia and China to recruit PhD level graduates to come to work at their Chandler campus because they can't find folks who are not only well educated enough in this country, but who are motivated enough to do the job they're asking people to do. What do I consider the impact of the fast-growing Hispanic market on the future of local, state, and national business and economic growth? I got to be honest with you. I think that our stagnant economy affects everybody. The Hispanic population is, as you said, James, the largest growing segment in the state, or was it the nation?
Fastest growing.
Fastest growing. To me, it does make a whole lot of difference because, like I said when I opened up, we're all in this together. You know, the reality is we have to foster our free market. We have to adhere to our Constitution in this country. And we all have to work together, regardless of our political ideology, regardless of who we want to see in the Oval Office. And I pledge to do that for you as a representative of CD9. Thank you.
Thank you. Andre?
Premise is more government spending, I say no. The Bush stimulus package, the Obama stimulus package, the CBO nonpartisan organizations said unemployment will be below actually 6%, 5.7%. Didn't get anywhere near there. That doesn't work. I agree with what Kristen said. We shouldn't be spending money just to look at programs that may or may not work. We don't have the luxury of that. I think quite simply, to get people back to work, we have to recognize what isn't working. We have a very, very high corporate tax rate. Let's start there. I think we start knocking down our corporate tax rate, a lot of money will be repatriated back to this country by manufacturers left by because they couldn't afford to produce here. When I was on the council in Chandler, Intel gave us that story. It's a true story. We were able to lower their secondary income tax. Guess what? They expanded, and they're still expanding. $16 billion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Injecting government funds to stimulate the economy, and it hasn't worked. I think that when I talked earlier about how I want to do away with overregulation, overtaxation, and cronyism, I was talking about crony capitalism, this very idea that we have the federal government picking winners and losers in the economy. And I'm a strong believer in the power of the market to pick the winners and losers. I don't believe that the federal government should be doing it. I believe in a very limited government. And I think that government should be ashamed of himself for continuing to suggest that this is the way to go after it's failed time and time again.
Thank you.
Paul Krugman hasn't written very much that I've ever agreed with, so not having read his book, I would say I'm not a Keynesian. I don't believe government spending is the answer. When my husband and I started our business, as I told you, out of our living room, we didn't get a bailout. We didn't get a stimulus. We couldn't print money. We had to make it work. And as someone who meets a payroll, as I mentioned before, for 14 people, if I can't make payroll, I have to dip into my meager military pension. And that's happened many times. So many times that we've questioned whether or not we could stay in business. So I have a real aversion to any kind of government subsidy, and I am a pure free market capitalist. I also own an office building. And when the bank came to me and said, Wendy and Hal, we want to tender you a 30-year mortgage because your rent roll so far doesn't support a mortgage payment for any shorter term of a mortgage. And we said, we don't want to be in debt until our 80s. So we took a 10-year mortgage, and they said, how will you afford the mortgage payment? And I said, watch me. And I rented every one of those suites, and I made it work, and I spruced up the place, and I called all up and down Rural Road to see what the rates were, and we rented it. That's what a small business owner has to do every day. Government needs to do more of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I think President Ronald Reagan said it the best. He said that we are a nation with the government, not the other way around. And too many times we get involved and we look to government for the solution. Government is not the solution. Government, and many times, is the problem. It's very simple, you guys. We can fix this problem by being more competitive. And you'll hear me say this over and over again. We must be able to compete globally today. Since Barack Obama has been president, 5.4 million people have left the workforce. We have, since 2007, we have had 70% more of our citizens on welfare, 45 million people. The only way to cure this is to become competitive globally, bring jobs back to America. And the only way that we can do that is to take a look at the corporate income tax structure that we have, and also the regulations. I will continue to say that. Right now, we are going to be hit with two of the biggest tax increases in the history of mankind. Obamacare, which the Supreme Court has said is a tax. And if the Bush tax cuts are not made permanent, it will destroy this economy. Taxation is not the answer.
So, Paul Krugman, and How Do We End the Depression Now? I have not read the book. I don't agree with Paul Krugman's view. When I get my economic expertise, I read a Milton Friedman book. And, you know, we don't have a revenue problem in this country. We have a spending problem in this country. And we have to stop printing money out of Washington, D.C. and destroying our dollar more and more every day. And we have to make tough decisions in Washington, D.C. and cut programs that are unrealistic to maintain into the future. Democrat programs, Republican programs. There's a lot of waste in Washington, D.C. You know, if you want to fix where we are today, you don't take a bigger piece of the pie in the form of taxes, you grow the pie. And you create more jobs, you create more revenue, you create more tax dollars. Minute and a half, right?
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you.
This has been a pretty interesting conversation so far. What I've heard so far is, in fact, at odds with what every single president of the United States over the past 60 years in our country has believed in. And that is, when times are tough economically, one of the roles of government is making sure that people have more money in their pockets to go out and be able to buy things, to be able to go to small businesses like Wendy's or others. That's true for Democrats and Republicans, whether they believe in government spending or whether they believe in tax cuts or some combination of the two. And this kind of conversation about the problem here being overspending is at odds with what we're seeing in the economy. And I believe in balanced budgets. I believe in fiscal responsibility. I was honored to